correct me if I'm wrong, in the last 15 years or so, more than 100 acting credits, a dozen directing credits, and about 50 movies produced by your company, Rabbit Bandini, including the one that people are going to see later this afternoon.
I have to check those numbers. I haven't looked at my IMDb page in a long time. But.
So let's talk a little bit about sort of, for you, the journey from acting to being a content creator and not just enabling yourself to direct, but also other filmmakers like the people who made Yosemite.
Great. Good question, and I have a really long answer, so I'll just try to make it as fast as possible. But I think it's a nice path to kind of expose. So I grew up in Northern California. I moved to LA to go to UCLA. I was an English major because I didn't apply to the theater program. And when I got to UCLA, I was in LA, and half the industry, or half the city was in the industry, and I thought, oh, yes, this is what I want to be doing right now, and I'm young, and this is the time. But the theater program at UCLA told me I had to wait until I was a junior to even apply, because I hadn't applied as an incoming freshman, and so that seemed like ages to me. And so I left UCLA after a year, went and studied acting in the Valley, and had this, and then was fortunate enough to have a career. But going into the movie business as an actor, I didn't really understand. I think my understanding of how movies worked was a little off. I now understand films to be a director's medium, or at least that's how I try to engage with them, whether I'm an actor or a director. I think they work best with the director kind of as the guide. But when I was a young actor, I'd go and prepare for a project and do tons of research, but I wouldn't do it always in conjunction with the director. So I'd show up and be like, all right, I did 8 months of this, and this is the character I came up with, and it'd be like, either like, no, I don't think that's right, or oh, you learned how to ride a horse, and like you can stand on its back while it gallops. That's awesome, but all those horse scenes got cut. So, so I've got to this place where I was like, oh man, I'm not doing something. I'm doing is not right, and so my first impulse was to go and direct my own movie. And so I just got a bunch of, I spent my own money. I had done a play called The Ape that was co-written by Meriwether Williams, who was a head writer on SpongeBob SquarePants. And it had a limited number of locations. It mostly took place in an apartment. And I just thought, well, this is manageable as a first, film. And I had some pretty good people on it. The DP, Dave Klein, I think he shoots for Homeland now, or he was on True Blood, and the editor was, oh man, what's the Clerks guy? He edited Clerks. Kevin Smith's editor. And, but my producer, I think Vince produced that one. My producer was a little as new as I was to kind of, directing and making a movie. So, in some ways, we were sort of finding our way. We didn't, if we were smart, we maybe would have hired a producer that could guide us, a little bit more. But I was so, as an actor, I got so defensive about certain kinds of collaboration. I think we probably purposely didn't have somebody that had more experience than I did around, just because I didn't want to have to answer to anybody else anymore. And so the movie is what it is. It's okay. It was kind of wacky. The good things in it, I guess. And then we made a couple more, and and again, like, I remember we shot it, and then we had this weird editor on that one who I just didn't like. He was so negative, like, and he was editing in my house, and so I'd like go up and be like, why did you do it that way? This is so bad. And I was like, Vince, you gotta get rid of this guy. Like, I just hate working with him. And instead, Vince like made him a producer, I don't know, for some reason. And finally, I was just like, I cannot stand this guy anymore. So we got rid of him. We got another editor, and we edited that. I'm just telling you, just because we edited that movie. It was called Good Time Max for like 8 months. Like, I would be working on movies, but I would go over to the Valley where our other guy Sven was working, and we'd just stay up all night editing. And it was like, I think, a time when I really learned, oh, you shot it this way, it didn't quite work, you know, in finding like figuring out, oh, there are alternative solutions if what you had in your head didn't work, or the way that you shot it didn't quite isn't coming together as you imagined it. Like, that was sort of my apprenticeship in post-production, like 8 months of just like, I don't know why we were so slow, but it was just like, oh my God. But, and then finally, I had this, obviously I had this urge in me to direct, and I was gonna do this short film based on a William Faulkner story called Red Leaves. And we were gonna shoot in New Orleans. We went and did a scout, and it like involved like running through swamps, and there was like a washed up riverboat that the natives were living in, and there was like snake bite and all this stuff. And if we budgeted it now, maybe we'd be smarter about it, but I think our budget came out to like almost $500,000 for this short, and it was just like, what the heck? And I remember Vince saying to me, like, I think you're gonna feel so bad if you spend all that money on this short film. Like, why don't at least make it into a feature? And I was like, no, we have to, maintain the integrity of the length. It was a short. This needs to be a short. And finally, like, I woke up and I was like, all right, why don't I just go to film school instead? So I went. So I did not spend the money on that movie. We shot a test on 35mm film, a test that actually turned out really well. We shot it in the woods where we shot Pineapple Express when Seth and I are out in the woods, and just the people running around in like very little clothing, and and it actually looks great. And it was like, oh, why are we gonna go to New Orleans and like spend all this money? Like, we just did it in one day. But and then I went to NYU, and what I really got out of NYU was, I'd been working in movies for about almost 15 years at that point. And so I knew a lot of things. Like, some of my classmates hadn't been on a set before. They were taken because they were great photographers, or maybe good writers, or had a good vision, but they had very little set experience. I had a lot of set experience, and but what I got out of it was a real kind of a deeper understanding about collaboration, and also it gave me the confidence to make the movies that I want to make. Meaning, this is a business, the film business, more than a lot of, each art form, if you want to make money off of it, has its own kind of dance that you have to do, or think that you have to do. But the film business, because you sell units. You're not just making one piece that you sell to one collector, you're making it for multiple viewers. There's this thing that kind of gets ingrained of like these rules of tension, arcs, kinds of characters, kinds of stories that you're supposed to tell, and all of that stuff. And sometimes it's not even explicit, it's sort of like this tacit understanding that gets into your head if you get into this business. And one thing that NYU really gave me was like, oh no, this is you kind of taking the time to go and make the movies that you want to make. Do the stories and the kinds of films and the approaches that you want to do, James. Like, you can do, the Spider-Man films to make a lot of money. You can do, these other films that get nominated for Milk or whatever, wins Oscars. But like, now this is your time. Why are you doing this? And it's like, well, because nobody else is making these movies, and these are the movies that I want to see. These are the movies that I want to do. And so these are the movies that I'm going to make, like William Faulkner adaptations and stuff like that. And then the final chapter, or the newest chapter of my life, is teaching and helping other filmmakers, get their stuff made. And it really came out of a love for academia, or just like being around, certain kinds of institutions. I just love school, and I had been a student for long enough. It was like, all right, it's time to kind of give back, But also, sort of, it's really just gratitude. Like, if I looked back and said, like 10 years ago, like, what would you want to accomplish? Like, adapting, a Cormac McCarthy book, and, making these William Faulkner movies, and, it's like, that's it. I really, that was my dream. So it was sort of like, all right, well, why don't I help some other people, do their dreams? So I teach now at the grad film school at UCLA and the grad film school at USC, and also at Cal Arts.